Beth, how about at Homeland Security? I know you've got a plethora of examples. Give us a highlight of one that you'd like to shine the spotlight on in regards to an example of the journey that you all have been on.
So I'm going to go back a couple of years to one that is a personal success story, in my opinion. A couple of years ago, when I was down at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the DHS CIO at the time, as part of data center consolidation, had brokered a deal to exit 2 zones of our main data center 1 and in effect sublet that space to another federal agency. Unfortunately for ICE, we were the ones occupying those zones in the data center. And so while we had a plan for data center migration out of data center 2, we had to really switch the timeline and focus on exiting out of these zones in data center 1. And it was a very short term to move. And the initial thought was, well, we would just move out of those zones in the data center and move into another zone in the data center. And the CIO at the time, I was the deputy CIO, said that doesn't really make any sense. Why would we move within the data center just to turn around and then execute our cloud adoption strategy? So we're just going to go straight to the cloud. And I think initially a lot of folks, including the DHS CIO at the time, said that's you're not going to meet the timeline. So that's really a challenge. But I am so proud of that team. They came together and they focused on the activities that needed to happen. We had some very old legacy applications that were of particular concern to migrate to the cloud. And so in order to be successful, we started with saying to our customers, this is our priority. This is an activity we have to complete. So we need your partnership to stand down on changes to any of the legacy applications while we do this migration. And because of, I think, a really great partnership and a lot of trust with our mission partners, we were able to put that freeze, if you will, in place and begin the migration. And because we hadn't really done this to any great extent previously, we saved the most challenging migration to the very end. And it's a very large database. It's a law enforcement database that has dependencies across DHS. There are other DHS component agencies that use it. And frankly, it was the one that I said we were either going to be successful or I was going to be looking for another career, frankly. So as we got to the very end and we were ready to migrate this particular database, what we found is we were migrating to a location on the West Coast. And when we migrated the data and started doing some testing with the front-end applications, the latency was too great for the front-end applications. And it was not going to work for one of the component agencies that we serviced with this particular data center. And at the time, it was uh-oh, we're not going to meet our timeline, and we're going to fail here. And through partnership, not only with the mission elements, but with the cloud service provider, we were able to lift all of our infrastructure and in 6 weeks move it from the West Coast data center, cloud data center, to their facility on the East Coast. And not only did we meet our timeline in exiting out of data center 1, but over the next 6 to 9 months, ICE was able to fully migrate out of all DHS data centers, and I think they're one of our components that is an absolute success story with cloud adoption and data center optimization. Well, frankly, they're not in a data center anymore, and they I think the steps that were really important in that is partnership with the folks that you're serving, your mission element, partnership with your vendor community, because otherwise, if you run into trouble, you're not going to be successful. And then the last piece of that turned out to be a huge part of the success story is the federal employees that worked on that initiative gained a tremendous amount of experience, right, to talk about getting a process in place and doing this. And I recently was allowed to bring one of those employees up to DHS headquarters to help us with a migration of another very large, complex application, legacy application, from the data center to a cloud hosting environment. So the ability to share those best practices, to share that experience, has really helped us accelerate our cloud adoption strategy.